Hello everybody, Calamity here with not really a controversial video, but a video about Bennett C6, which I still see people talk about, and whether or not you should activate his C6 or not. Now obviously you'll see that I don't have a C6, and that is actually not by choice. Believe it or not, I've been playing this game since launch, and I just don't have a C6 Bennett just by RNG. That might be crazy to some of y'all, but I just, like, even on this banner, I just kept pulling until I got Nahida, and if I would have gotten a Bennett C6, I probably would have activated it just because of the teams that I use. However, let's just talk about the constellation first, and then we'll talk about whether or not you should activate his C6. So, what does his C6 do that is so controversial? Sword, claymore, or pole arm wielding characters inside Fantastic Voyage's radius, i.e. his burst, will gain a 15% pyro damage bonus, and their weapons will be infused with pyro. So once again, sword, claymore, and pole arm characters will get infused with pyro. This means that your physical normal attacks will deal pyro damage instead of physical damage. A lot of people at least used to say that you should never ever activate Bennett C6. Now this video is not going to straight up tell you you should activate it or you should not activate it. What I'm going to tell you is look at what teams you're using and then decide if you want to activate his C6 or not. So for example, for me, this C6 wouldn't do anything for me. Well, actually it would help because I use Yoimiya a lot with Bennett. So she would actually get the 15% pyro damage boost. The infusion is wasted on her because you can't infuse bow or catalyst users. So it would be fine for me if I got it. I also use the Raiden's international comp, and that is also not affected by Bennett C6 because you're not using physical attacks with Jingcho, Zhongling, and Raiden. You're only doing damage via her skill and burst, and mainly the burst, right? And that cannot be overridden by pyro infusion with his C6. It will still do electro damage. You're still going to be fine. If you're wondering, okay, when is it not fine? When should I not activate this? Look at what teams you're using. Are you using a physical damage dealer like Eula? If you're using Bennett with Eula, then you might want to reconsider activating this because you will be unable to use Bennett with Eula, as she will be doing pyro damage with her physical attacks instead of, well, her physical damage. Or if you're using any physical damage dealer. If you're doing any sort of physical damage team comp, you know, Machine Gun Fish, Zhongli, if you're doing, I don't know, Razor, possibly Jinyan, seriously, any physical damage dealer that uses a melee weapon. Oh, sorry, I said Machine Gun Fish, that wouldn't apply. But yeah, if you're using any melee physical damage dealer, then you probably don't want to activate this if you're using them with Bennett. That being said, a lot of the people that told you not to activate this, it's most likely that video was old, like maybe a year or even 2 years ago now, when there weren't so many support characters in the game. But now there's a lot of support characters in the game that a lot of teams don't need to have Bennett anymore. There's just so many different options. If you're doing like a normal attack damage build, Yunjin is an option, or Candace is an option. If you're doing, I mean, now we have the new Dendro element, right? You don't really, I mean, you could use Bennett with an aggravate team, but usually you do Dendro and Electro with Hydro these days, not, you know, you don't use Bennett in there. And then if you're doing a freeze comp, obviously Bennett's not there either. So ask yourself, what teams are you running right now? And what teams do you want to run in the future? If you still want to, like, if you plan to pull for like a Eula in the future and you want to use her with Bennett, then don't activate his Constellation 6. However, if you don't care, because that notification bugs you, or, you know, like the teams that you're already using don't care if he has the pyro infusion, then you're fine. Just activate it. Who cares? Again, keep in mind, this C6 does not affect you if you're using him with a bow or a catalyst user. So if you want to buff your Ningguang with Bennett, this pyro infusion does not override her geo attacks. She's still going to do geo damage. Honestly, the C6 will do nothing for them, right? Because it's pyro damage bonus, so who cares? And the infusion won't work. If you're using Heizo, if you're using Melt on You, will still work. But keep in mind, if you do use him with a character like Ayaka, who has her own infusion when she does her sprint, Bennett C6 will override that, so be careful. So if you do use Ayaka and Bennett together, she will not do cryo damage even with her own infusion if she's in Bennett's burst. She will do pyro damage, and that will be a DPS loss. So just keep that in mind. But that being said, like, Bennett's best teams are fine whether he's C6 or not, is what I'm trying to say here. All right, let's take a look at the most. This is like an old demographic now because this was back in 3.1. Obviously, there's going to be a new one for 3.2. So let's look at this is a list of popular teams that are using the Spiral Abyss. Now, keep in mind this is 3.1 and this is a limited sample size. Let's just use this as an example to see where Bennett is being used. And these are, you know, again, these are the most popular teams being used. And once again, we have Raiden Shogun team, which includes him. And as I said before, his pyro infusion doesn't mess anything up, right? Because you're just using Zhongling's burst for damage, you're just using Jincho's burst and skill for damage, and the to set up elemental reactions. Raiden, same thing. You're not really doing anyone's physical attack, so his pyro infusion doesn't matter. In fact, Zhongling is probably going to get a damage boost because pyro damage increase. So Raiden's burst is not affected by C6 Bennett or his infusion, so she's fine to just, you know, take the sword out and start doing damage with it. Now, you also see him being used on the top left here with Childe, Kazuha, and Zhongling. Once again, he does not mess with anyone in this team, whether he is C6 or not, because Childe is a bow character. His attacks will not be infused by his C6 Bennett, so you're fine to C6 him if you want to. And then we can see the rest of the teams. Other than there's another iteration of Raiden Shogun team, the only difference is instead of Jincho, you're using Yelan. Literally the only difference, nothing changes. There's also another version down on the bottom left with, it's the Raiden Hypercarry team with Kazuha, Kujo Sara, and Bennett. Same thing. Nobody is getting affected here. Everybody's fine. And then you can see there's some Aggravate teams on the bottom right with the Kaching version and Traveler. Again, keep in mind this is 3.1, so obviously if we were to relook at these teams again in 3.2, which I plan to do in the future, we're probably going to see a lot of different characters up here, and again, it's going to be fine. Like, TLDR, whether or not you C6 your Bennett or not, you will be fine. There are plenty of other teams you can run that don't require him now in the game, and basically, again, just ask yourself, okay, what teams am I using with Bennett? Doesn't matter. If you are using him in a physical damage team, then you might not want to C6 him. Unless you have a backup support or another teammate that you feel like could be better used with your physical damage DPS. But yeah, these days, it's not really much of a controversy. I don't have the ability to air quotes, but you're fine. Childe, you're fine. If you're still not sure whether or not you should C6 your Bennett, feel free to ask in the comments down below, and I'll do my best to try to help you out, or maybe someone else can help you out as well, when it comes to, you know, his pyro infusion. But either way, you're fine whether or not you choose to C6 this C6 your Bennett or not. That's all for this video. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.